Hello, horrorphiles. You're listening to Dissecting Horror, examining the anatomy of fear in film, television, and literature. I'm writer and performer Kelsey Zukowski.
I'm filmmaker Stephen Aguilera. Today we are joined by the great curator of creepypasta, Lady McCreepsta. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
In this episode, we'll examine the Shudder exclusive She Will, starring Alice Krige.
This discussion will be spoiler-free.
We are the Horror Whisperers, your champions of horror and the keepers of the fearscape on this podcast of frightsome delights, if you will.
I will. And we hope you will join us too, won't you? Now,
I pronounced her name wrong, didn't I?
What did you say?
Krige? I don't know. Is that Krige? Is that
Krige.
Krige.
Well, he has.
No,
I'm assuming the parentheses
It's Krieg.
Krieg?
Yes. I actually looked it up because I was confused too. It's pronounced Krieg.
Okay, I assumed that until I saw the parentheses.
Yeah, the parentheses are actually supposed to help you pronounce it correctly.
It looks like Krige.
Nah, well, that's
Right, that's what I would have said. Krige.
That's supposed to distinguish it from Krieg.
Krieg.
An aging film star retreats to the Scottish countryside with her nurse to recover from surgery. While there, mysterious forces of revenge emerge from the land where witches were burned, according to Shudder. The very first thing we see is her in surgery, and I was under the impression, especially when she starts narrating over it, about we all have masks or something, I thought she was getting plastic surgery. Being an actress and having actual plastic surgery, the actress herself, that was my impression. It took a different turn, like 7 minutes in. She did describe it as being a vasectomy.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mastectomy. Vasectomy is something else.
Oh.
Oh, yeah.
Now,
Mastectomy, yeah.
I thought she called it a vasectomy later, like specifically.
Yeah, no, well, if she called it that, she was wrong.
What is that? This is an example. We're going to kick right off with my ignorance of women's issues as we talk about a woman in a story that's specifically about women's issues. So what is a vasectomy, do I dare ask?
So a vasectomy is actually not a woman's issue. It's a man issue.
Oh.
A vasectomy is when you get the snip.
Now, I should have known that, but obviously I've never had that procedure. Not yet, anyway. That's like that. It conjures up feelings of horror in me.
Straight up.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, so let's stop talking about that.
Okay.
Well, on that that opening, I loved a lot about this movie. We'll just start right off there. But definitely with her being like aging film star, there was some kind of points of just the pressures, I think, especially on aging women in Hollywood and, sort of societal expectations. And I love how she says that, like, this mask is about preservation, which, could go in a lot of different directions. But it kind of sets up some of her sort of personal demons and continued pressures, and definitely with the procedure, it can, impend on one's like view of femininity and womanhood, and just has her like kind of struggling throughout what she's going through, but also more so what happened to her earlier on in life.
I loved the visuals of the film. I can't say it drew me in, though. I can't say like that first, I mean, it was beautiful. It was like a painting, right? Like the visuals, the way it was set up and everything, that first opening sequence with the voiceover and everything, you go straight into it knowing that, this is going to be an artsy film. But I can't say that gripped me into it straight away. I don't know. Maybe it's because my palette is slightly different. I enjoyed it as a visual film, but it took a minute for me to properly get into it, to properly let myself be absorbed. You know what I mean? Like it's in terms of the story and everything. I felt like it was a little slow moving, but I understood why it was slow moving. You needed, because they were trying to set a tone and they were trying to create a certain type of atmosphere. And if you moved it any faster than the pace that it went, it wouldn't have given the same effect, especially towards the end of it. But yeah, in terms of it was a little bit in the beginning, like, the whole mask thing. Same like you, I wasn't sure what they were talking about. And then I think that was the only part of the movie where there was actually a voiceover. No, just like right at the beginning. Was there a voiceover?
A little
in
at
it?
the end.
A little at the end?
Yeah, so it's kind of to intro and close it up, basically.
Okay. Story-wise, that was okay.
Well, I did notice that once drones came to be a thing in filmmaking, filmmakers, especially in horror, have taken advantage. We were talking about one, was it Smile?
I think it was Smile, yeah.
Every
haven't
other
watched that
shot,
one, yeah.
it was just amazing how many drone shots were included. And I think it can be done effectively, but it stands out more because it used to be more of a rare thing to rent a helicopter and have to film all this stuff. And so I feel like that could be overdone a little bit, though I did love the atmosphere and it did do a lot to frame the setting where this creepy event was taking place. In fact, it might have been one of my most favorite aspects is just the visuals of that landscape. And I'm assuming it was actually in Scotland and they didn't just film it in Canada or someplace. Now, another point I want to make to your point about getting involved was, how can I say this? I don't want to repeat the same thing every time we do a podcast because it is a common thing, but the protagonist here, Veronica, played by Alice Krige, she is not exactly what you would call an active character. There isn't really a goal that she has at any point until the last 5 minutes of the film where she actually finally takes some action and does something. There's a little bit of hint of her partaking in some vengeance-based manipulation about halfway in. But beyond that, she spends a lot of time just absorbing her environment and taking in what's happening and trying to make sense of these feelings that she's gaining throughout the story. But I think when that is what we're given, it makes it hard for us as an audience to really get on board and be interested in what she's supposed to be doing because we don't know where this is going yet. There's no definitive, I need to steal the crown at the end, or I need to get the girl or something. It's just, okay, where is this going? What is she doing? And it gets a little bit dull or slow when you don't know what the purpose is. But the themes are there, and we can soak in the ambiance and get a good vibe, but it does crawl.
I felt like it gave me Hereditary vibes, where I think the first act of Hereditary was you just kind of gave up. You didn't know what was going on until that particular scene, right? So this sort of gave me that type of vibe where I suppose I just had to turn my head off a bit. I just had to turn my thoughts a bit because I don't know, it might be, it probably is just conditioning, right? When you watch a movie, you kind of, you want them to hold your hand and take you through it. And this was more of an art piece where, no, I'm not going to take you anywhere. Just sit here and just go with it. Just relax into the film, and then you'll enjoy it. So the moment I think I started not trying to figure out, like, where is the story going? Is it this type of story? Is it that type of story? What is going on with her? The moment I stopped trying to analyze the movie while watching it, I think that was when I properly allowed myself to go and enjoy it for what it was. And it was an art piece. It was not just the story, it was the visuals, it was everything else. The story it was a good story. It wasn't there was nothing wrong with the story, the way it was told, it was fine. But it was one of those things where, like you said, there's no the storyteller wasn't taking you by the hand and guiding you straight. This is going to be the end result. I think we only figured out what her the word objective is not the right word, but what she wanted to do, probably 2/3 of the way in. Like towards the end of the film, that was when you figured out, oh well, okay then, And it also gave you hints about what happened to Veronica. It didn't really tell you straight up, hey, this is what happened to her, and that's why she is doing these things, or this is why she's feeling that which way. But I think that's also very realistic. Because as women, we go through a lot of things. I think there was a statistic that came out years ago, something alarming, to the effect of like 1 in every 2 or 3 girls has been sexually violated or abused
Yeah.
or something like that. I think it was when the whole Me Too movement started, right? That was when
Uh-huh.
everybody started telling stories about, hey, you know what, this happened to me. And it was just alarming. A lot of us thought, hey, you know what, like, you know, I was groped in a public place once, and you sort of don't tell anybody because for some reason we feel shame. We feel
Yeah.
embarrassed. Like, even though you did nothing and you got groped, because I remember that happening to me when I was probably 11 or 12. And this
Mhm.
was, it was a religious gathering. It was a religious gathering. Oh my gosh.
Wow.
It was a religious gathering. I was with a friend of mine, and somebody, as we were walking past the crowd, somebody just groped me, right? And I didn't tell anyone because I was embarrassed. So I think that, you know, that's very realistic in terms of how the story was told. She doesn't say outright what has happened to her or anything like that. It was almost a coming to terms of what happened to her leading up to that point. Because it is, I think with women, it's like that.
Mhm.
It takes you a while to admit, like, hey, you know what? That happened, wasn't my fault. I want to do something. It's like sometimes that takes years to get to that point, you know?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, and I liked, again, they didn't necessarily have to spell it out like this was specifically it. Like,
Mhm.
it could have been clearly some sort of abuse. Clearly she was manipulated or used in some way, and there was this kind of darkness, and that kind of broke her in ways that she had to like learn to deal with. But yeah, it definitely had a certain avant-garde, or like you could take it whether, there's images where she's looks beaten. Now that could have even been like metaphorical. That could have been like just how she felt wounded, and how her spirit felt. But and it kind of didn't matter, like the specifics. Like obviously it's something really dark happened to her that shaped her. And I think in a lot of ways it's, really in the beginning, she says it. I know I feel a little alone on this aspect. But like, I don't need to go into a movie and need to know exactly where it's going to end, I don't know. I'm a very in the moment sort of viewer, I
But that's
guess.
good. But that is good. So when I said that whole, like, guiding my hand type thing, it is literally, that is just that is how I suppose I'm wired to watch a movie. I don't think that's the right way to watch a movie. I think you're supposed to go into a dark room, turn off all the lights, and stop thinking about anything else, and just let the storyteller tell the story, right? But it's sort of, I don't know, it's short attention span, modern life. I'm going to just blame modern life. I'm just going to blame...
Just blame men.
I'll just blame men.
Here's where I think that writing everything so it's on the nose is too far in the other direction. You don't want everything spelled out to where you're just getting clobbered with information or story or characters and you don't have to think about it. But if you go too far in the art house side of things, or the fine art side, where it's so ambiguous, it's frustrating. You're like, what are you trying to say? What does this mean? I felt that while watching this quite a bit, and had to watch it a second time to really like, oh, okay, I can see why they put this shot here, or why this sequence is here, and so forth. And I wouldn't call it pretentious. It wasn't like they were trying to just be artsy about it. But at the same time, you have to, as an artist, as a writer, you have to get out of your head and put yourself in the audience's viewpoint while you're reading your own stuff and say, okay, does this make sense? If somebody was just hitting me with this information, will I be able to make sense of it? And I'm not sure if that's just something innate or it comes with experience. These filmmakers, which, maybe I should get into this now. When we start the film, it says it's a Dario Argento film.
Presented.
Presents.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, wow, okay, I've never seen one of his films. I asked my mom for Suspiria for Christmas, and I haven't watched it yet. But I thought, okay, well, this is an interesting coincidence. And about, I don't know, a fourth of the way through, I said, wow, okay, this guy's style. This guy must be like a total left-winger, because, man, this is... It looks and feels like it was written by feminists. It was very clear that there were themes of Me Too, like we were talking about, and the men are definitely have to be very careful about everything I word from here on. Men aren't portrayed as positively as they could be in this film. There's a theme of men being very creepy or rapey or just generally weird or pigs. And I thought, wow, okay, he must not like men very much, but let's see where this is going. I think men are the villain in this film. And I think that experience that she goes through was very much based on Roman Polanski and all that, which happened in the early 70s. So there's a basis for it. It just felt like it was too slanted in that direction. It wasn't until the film was over and it was written by Charlotte Colbert. I'm just going to assume it's not Colbert, and Kitty Percy. And I thought, okay, well, all right, that says it. But I was thinking to myself, their experience as filmmakers may be it's a little too preachy, I was going to say, or even too heavy-handed in that regard. Like maybe they're not as experienced as they could have been to make it a little more subtle or make it more real. And I did look them up, and I think their experience is based on a couple of TV episodes and several shorts that they had made. So I thought, okay, well, that's probably it. But I was wondering if you two even noticed, like as women, did it seem that way to you as well? Or did it just seem natural or even a relief to see that come out?
I think generally I love strong, fierce, especially if someone who is wronged or condemned, like just strong females in horror. And, sometimes, again, sometimes men are the, focus of their trauma and finding a way to fight back through that. And I loved how it connected to, how many times throughout like the dark history element of during witchcraft trials across the world, not just here, even specifically in Scotland in that period, about 85% of the women or witches condemned and killed were women. So, there was men as well. But I think it's just a truth in some cases, like not that all men are, this way, but is more like her personal experience. It seemed like for her trauma and her struggle and having, to me, the point felt like her trying to survive in this world that can be cruel and vicious. And but then along that way of preservation, she finds a way to kind of do more than just the minimal survive and get by. She kind of finds some peace and strength in working through that. I think sometimes it is a slight flaw that sometimes films like this or, more feminist angle horror films, sometimes it seems like it could go a long way if they had like one good male character who is caring and decent, Again, there was really two main cases in this film of men who were very much I guess more if you go back to the villagers in the witch condemning. So I guess technically there's more there, but as far as like central male characters that are kind of like preying on women or degrading or discarding them, it's really two main cases, which it's really the two main female characters. They both have an experience with it. So I didn't view it so much as like all men are horrible, but more like there was, especially being, this person who made her career and when she was a young, impressionable child and how that stayed with her. There is a certain extra power play and I don't know, sort of ease of getting trapped into that, which I think, yes, has come out some with the Me Too movement. But it seems like this stuff has been going on for so long, and there's many, young males who were victim of similar things too. So I don't think it's strictly a gender issue, but I think just in this case, they were viewing it through her experience and her lens. So long-winded answer, I think. And there's a few people in the like this like artist retreat that they're on, which aren't necessarily, I don't know, they're essentially harmless. You know, they might are kind of like viewed as a little, I don't know, in their own world and aloof. And again, they weren't like overly predatory characters, but they weren't necessarily that positive or a big of a focus either. So that's the one thing that I didn't view it as like man-hating, but they could have gone that extra step to make it clear of this is this personal experience and this one incident. And it is true that this can be an ongoing thing. Like, you know, it's just kind of a little bit of a reality that not that women can't fend for themselves and be strong or even be the ones to manipulate and do horrible things to a man, you know. But if you're, you know, a woman walking home alone at night, your instinct is to be on guard that you could be preyed upon at any point. So I think it was just kind of examining that reality a little.
Yeah, I think it was when the guy who was in the arts class condescendingly scoffed at the idea of a patriarchy, and his hand burst into flames. I was like, okay. And the protagonist grinned with such pleasure over that okay, and there's probably a little bit too much identity politics. It could have been done more subtly. I'm not against the premise of it. In fact, I wrote and made a short last week about a stalker guy who murders a young woman in her apartment. So I'm all for men being villains. So I'm not painting myself as being someone who's against any kind of negative portrayal of men. But there's a tipping point where it's just, okay, we get it. You know, there was nothing in this film written for me as a man. I was not able to engage. It was all definitely made for women, and there was no intention to do something that I could relate to. And I felt a little bit detached, I think, for that reason. I mean, I've never dealt with breast cancer, or I've had some harassment by both men and women, but I never had like, you know, a rape issue or anything. And these are like the more mainstream forefront sort of obvious attacks or issues that women have. And those were always there. And the women were very, very much strong and capable. But yeah, I felt like not exactly alienated, but a little disappointed that it didn't handle it a little bit more strategically.
See, I reckon there are two types of films, really. The same way there's two types of music, two types of art. There's a type of film where I am telling you a story because I want you to understand what I'm telling you. It's communication, right? Communication is two ways. I have a message, I will put it on a medium. You receive that message, you understand what it is that I'm feeling. Same with music. There's music that's exactly that as well, and dance and any sort of art form. But there's also another art form which is just purely expression, where it doesn't matter whether you understand what I am saying, what I am feeling, I am getting it out of me. That's the point of it. So I think like with this film, it was more of the latter. The fact that there was the voiceover in the beginning, I think that set the tone for what you are about to see, set the tone for why it is so skewed. It is, like you said, Kelsey, through her lens. I think it was 100% meant to be, this is what she sees, what she feels, how she sees the world. And that voiceover in the beginning was trying to set that tone. I don't necessarily think it did a terribly great job of it, because I think I only realized all of that at the end of the movie. It's like, aha, this is why it's like this, is because it's all her point of view. It wasn't it didn't set the tone at the beginning that this is going to be her story, which is why I think that, you know, you felt alienated, that this is not a story for me to watch. But it is, I think the reason it played out the way it did is because this is her story, and it came from her, even from the beginning. Like we were saying, that I didn't know where it was going, what the point of the story was, because it felt like that is the whole film was her thought process, her going through everything, how she saw everything, and then, you know, it culminated to the end. So I think with me, that's how I see films, music, most art pieces. There's one type where I want that connection. So I am very sad at the moment. I'm going to write a really sad song. So I'm going to play it to you so you understand how sad I am. But then there's also the type of art form where, I feel this certain way. I'm going to make this music. It may be totally terrible. You may hate it, but you know what? It's out of my system now, moving on to the next thing. So I think that this is that type of art film. It was, which is why I said at the beginning, like, I felt it was a beautiful painting. Maybe not my taste, not my cup of tea, but I can appreciate it for what it was. As to like the whole did I feel, I think what you were asking earlier, like when we watched it as women, when we watched the film, did we see that it was skewed towards the female, not so much that's not correct, the female perspective is not correct, but did we feel the men were being portrayed, I suppose, unfairly, right? I honestly can't say that that clocked at all. I'm not saying that I thought that, oh, they're being portrayed unfairly, but it wasn't really even a concept that I was digesting. It was very much just the whole well, this is her point of view. This is what she experienced, what she's feeling. The film was very much, I think, for lack of a better word, it tried to put forward feeling more than words.
Yes.
With the visuals, with the music, with the atmosphere, with the overlays and everything. That was more like, I'm going to try and make you feel this through this screen more than anything else. So I think it was more of a feeling kind of film.
I was watching something on YouTube last night, in fact. It was one of those relationship shows where they talked about trying to relate to, let's say, your wife, and she's in an argument going to be more defending her side of it based on how she feels. It's going to be more feelings based, and the guy is going to be like logical about, oh, that's not sensible because of XYZ, and it's not going to register with her. You have to talk to her on a more feelings level in certain situations. Anyway, I don't want to generalize everybody in every situation, but anyway, that jives with what you're saying. While I was watching this, I was reminded of a very similar feel I had, and that was when we watched Guillermo del Toro's Cabinet of Curiosities. Did you watch that?
Yeah, I did.
The very last episode was also female directed, and it had a very similar feel where it was very much shots of the environment, atmospheric, moody, and dealt with tragedy and so forth. But I thought, wow, that's an interesting, distinctive vibe that a female directed film or television show, whatever, has versus a man's. And I don't know, I really love that visual aspect. I'm a visual artist myself, but the pacing was just, that was the main thing. It's like, if you're not feeling it, especially, it really tends to drag. But if you're into it, and I didn't know if it was because I'm a dude, and am I just not getting into it because I'm not, I don't have that sort of emotional balance or whatever. But did you guys respond negatively or positively to the pacing? What was your stance on that?
To be honest, I didn't respond negatively to almost anything in this movie. Feel like just talking on, well, I know you guys said it, for both of you, it took you like kind of a little longer to get into it. I think I was pretty enamored with it pretty quickly, but I was kind of just kind of taking it in, seeing where it went. But really, definitely when sort of some of the elements came alive when she's actually in Scotland, and kind of this inklings of this, darkness or unrested witch spirits from beyond kind of coming to life. And then seeing just is her, but also the other female lead, Desi, kind of both just, having, I don't know, so just some human real elements of, certain breakage or demons, and but still kind of trying to push forward and figure out, their way in the world, so to speak. I don't know. I felt definitely connected and interested in the characters, and just sort of, I loved the element of someone being condemned and, seemingly destroyed, but not being able to really be destroyed. I loved how they kind of took over the earth and extended, and it almost reminded me of like Medusa or something, where it was someone who was using that power or rage and using it to be a defender of other women, and sort of, kind of not really being able to be broken or fully ended, even in death. And, at first it definitely has a sinister, chilling, cold, ferocious beauty from the visuals to kind of seeing this, darkness awakening in it. It's definitely very atmospheric, and you can see how it slowly kind of connects and seeps into the protagonist's head more and more. But I don't know, I liked kind of just the journey that it took from seeming something kind of creepy and eerie, and okay, what is this? Like, what is this gonna do? What it could be a possession thing, or it could be just, trying to kill her. But I love how it kind of seems to be a little, especially how like one of her first comments is, other people write this off as creepy, and she says, no, it's tragic. Like, she has a way, it's like understanding the misunderstood, and even as cold and detached, and how much she kind of keeps herself away from people. There's something in her that kind of feels a kindred spirit or a connection to others who have kind of been wronged without even kind of fully realizing it. But I don't know, something about something that's a monster being condemned, having this force and connecting and lashing out for others.
Yeah, the witches were weaponized for her in a direction that really fit her story. And I think if there was a strong point to her character, it was that she did have a character arc. She did start off very dead and detached from people and life, and just wanted to go off and be by herself to die, basically. But as it progressed, she certainly did show signs of coming back to life, and her connection with that environment was invigorating her, but it wasn't making her more joyful or happy or anxious to get back into acting or anything like that. It was more vengeance based, I think. She was getting stronger and fighting back her demons that she's been carrying for so long. And I like that. And I think the whole witches aspect was gratifying to see. I would have liked to see more of the witches, I think, more of the reasoning behind their story and how that connected with Veronica's story. Maybe there's some parallels there. I
think it was just the parallels was just pain. No, that was what I got from it. That they were wronged, and so was she, and that was what that darkness attached to her darkness. Almost, they saw her as a kindred spirit because she was hurting the same way they were hurting. That's what I thought that connection was.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah.
And I think she had not really a possession taking place, but she was somehow connecting with that, the earth itself, the ashes of the witches. I'm not sure what the conduit was. It was that bog, the peat, I think it was. I thought that was interesting. I would have liked to have seen like specifically what was going on earlier, some sort of a more developed plot with the earlier witches, and just learn more about that. There was, I thought, maybe 5 or 10 pages of real like meaty content that was stretched out for 95 minutes. It didn't feel like there was a lot of twists and turns and like, oh, what's going to happen a minute from now? It's just like just taking in the space, and a lot of repeated sort of flashbacks and visuals of the witches from the past, or just strange, more abstract things. And then we get back to her waking up, and then 10 minutes later, 20 minutes later, there's another passing out moment that she has another. It's like,
and
okay.
It's identical. It's like they reused the same footage over and over again. I think that was a little bit lazy. I thought that was a little bit lazy, but hey, maybe they were just trying to drive a message home, like, ooh, look at this.
Maybe
video.
they used all their budget. I don't know.
That's what I mean. It's almost like, okay.
Yeah, that's fair. That wasn't something that I was, that was like, oh, like really this again? I don't know. I think I viewed it just as like if you've gone through something traumatic, and especially who knows, this might have been like the core of this might have over been one night something might have happened to her, and that kind of just replaying in your mind. Actually, one thing I thought was really haunting that she says towards the end when she's kind of starting to feel a little more, I don't know, healing, but still kind of fighting with everything. Imagine that, to be able to love without ghosts in your bed. So I can kind of view this as this, whatever that moment and that demon of hers kind of just always being with her. So again, it wasn't a huge issue, but I like that is valid of like maybe they could have shot a few different things.
In saying that, Lord of the Rings, Eye of Sauron or whatever, how many times did they show that in 4 movies, 5 movies, you know, exact same angle, exact same. So maybe, you know. So let's not fault them on that terribly. But yeah, I mean, in terms of the pacing you were asking earlier, I don't think it's a woman thing. Okay, because you mentioned Cabinet of Curiosities, that last episode was directed by a woman, had a similar feel in terms of pacing. I genuinely don't think that's a woman thing. I don't think it's a because the pacing is like that. As women, we get drawn in better. Because I didn't. I wasn't. I do think the pacing was necessary to tell the story that they wanted to tell, though. I don't think it could have been told if it was quicker. That 10 pages that you said they dragged out, I think if they cut that out, that effect wouldn't be there. There is a director, Godard, Jean-Paul Godard. I don't know if you're familiar. Art House. He you can't see the faces that I'm making right now, but I'm rolling my eyes and everything. So when I was in film school, they used to make us watch his films, and he is exactly that. He puts on screen visuals to make you feel a certain way. There was one that's been burned into my memory amongst others, one scene. And the name of the film is, I think it's called Traffic. I'm not sure. But there was this scene where it is just the camera going along the side of the road, and it is just traffic, right? Like gridlock traffic, people getting out of the cars, looking, trying to figure out what's causing this traffic jam. And it just keeps going on for longer than it needs to. And apparently the whole point of that is for you to feel as frustrated as the people in the car. Because as you watch, and when I say longer than it needs to, I'm not talking about 2 minutes or 3 minutes. I'm talking like full 10 minutes, and you're waiting for it to end already. Like, what's the point of this visual? But the whole point is to make you feel that way. So I think with this film, the reason it was, I might be wrong, obviously, I'm not the director, but the reason it was drawn out and paced that way is for you to feel how she did. Because like at certain points of the film, you feel a little lost, which is probably how she felt. You feel a little like, what is the point? Which is probably how she felt. Like, what's the point? I've gone through the surgery, double mastectomy. For a woman, that is huge, okay? It's it's part of your identity even. So you've gone through all this. You're on top of that, she's being with a film that she made her name as was being rebooted, and she's being left out of it. So again, like, what's the point of me? What's the point? Like, I'm lost. Why am I here? And I think that film made you feel that way. Why am I watching this? It is so long. It is drawn out. Like, why? And then towards the end of it, suddenly you get this epiphany. So this is why all of that happened, which is essentially how the character is feeling as well, right? Well, I have purpose now. This is what I'm going to do, because now I'm acknowledging that I'm, feeling some sort of way because of X, Y, and Z that happened. So I think the pacing was necessary for this film. I also think there are different types of horror films that have come out, though. Like, with the onset, like films like Midsummer, this film, She Will, any Jordan Peele film. I think, because they're all called horror, but they're a different type of horror. They're a horror that makes you feel uncomfortable, which is what this film made you feel. It made you feel uncomfortable, right? As opposed to, The Ring, which is the whole point of films like that is to make you get that chill down your spine. Or Pennywise, that makes you have that jump scare and not be able to turn the light off. So this wasn't, I don't think the point of this horror film was to make you have chills. It was more of a, Jordan Peele-esque, right? Like it makes you uncomfortable, makes you makes you feel more than anything else. But at the same time, it is a horror film. It did throw the witch element in there, and the whole unknown spirituality, all that. So, but that's how I view most horror films. Like when somebody says, "Do you want to watch a horror film?" Like, what's the film that's come out about that doll, Megan?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I haven't watched it yet, but I'm pretty sure that's a jump scare, chill down the spine kind of film, as opposed to, I feel uncomfortable. You
Right.
know? Yeah. So that's probably going to have give me your hand. Give me both hands. I'm going to take you through this, right? As opposed to this, which is all feeling based, But I think that's the point of this, though. So to make you feel.
Yeah, definitely. I think the focus was really meant to be self-discovery.
Yeah.
Definitely has elements of a lot of female bonding. And I think it's just like finding one's power. And so I didn't feel any pacing issues, but I can understand because I got into it pretty quickly and I connected and I was just enthralled and interested in like so many elements of what they were doing. But I can get when you either feel that connection or you don't, and yeah, so it's not an action-heavy movie. It's not a gore-heavy movie.
No, it's not that kind of horror.
Yeah, it's definitely much more. It's like a haunting, self-reflective, and connecting through other condemned women and monsters of beyond, essentially, is the core of it. And I found that very fascinating. But there's many different expansive types of horror, which is it's great that there's so many different elements of it.
Stephen, did you like the movie?
I'm going to say I liked it about 15%.
Okay.
I didn't hate it, but it was it wasn't necessarily a slog to get through, but I felt like when I write a story, I start with a good idea, a premise. I think, this grabs me, it excites me, and it's going to propel me for the next few weeks, months, years, whatever it takes to construct and finalize this into reality. And I was thinking, whoever made this is before I did any research. I thought it was Dario the whole time until about a third of the way through. But I thought, what about this excited the filmmakers? That they, this is it. I have to make a story. It was probably either some personal trauma that they were working through, like you were saying before, something they were trying to express, or it could have been a political agenda, or just something that just felt like it was in the news with Me Too. I mean, there's something there. I'm not sure. Like for me, I don't really see enough substance of a story there. I understand the premise, and it meant something to the filmmakers, but it's not real to me because I haven't lived that. So that's the main reason why I'm not connecting with it. But I feel like beyond the filmmakers themselves, the distributors, everybody along those lines had to be behind this. And I'm curious, like, what was the selling point for them when they got pitched this? They go, yes, that.
And 2 actors. That was
probably it. It was Alice and what was his Malcolm McDowell.
Yeah.
He was not painted in a very flattering light in that film. He was either throwing up or big close-ups of his nose with a wide-angle lens. It was not flattering.
Yeah, the cast was phenomenal, particularly Alice Krige, who really nails the complex mix of wounded and haunted, jaded and closed off, righteous and free. She has a very real quality to her due to the writing and, of course, her performance. She has moments of wit and increasing humanity as she bonds with Desi and seems to find herself through the undying spirits in the air. Yet there's still this hardness to her and grit that is sort of enlightened, experienced, and fierce. I really liked Kota Eberhardt's performance as well. I think I connected to her, and I don't know, she just had this real relatable quality to her. She comes across as very genuine while having these layers that slowly kind of come out as we learn more about her. she draws you in and offers this great depth and simply a character to connect to. Of course, we mentioned Malcolm McDowell. He definitely played the skeezy, entitled Hollywood director, exemplifying entitlement, cruelty, and hypocrisy well.
Alice Krige was first on my radar when she was in a film from, I think, the 70s called Ghost Story. She
Okay.
played the ghost. So she's been doing this for a lot of decades, this horror genre.
Yeah.
I remember her from Chariots of Fire and most prominently the Borg Queen in Star Trek First Contact. It was weird how she was basically an alien zombie, but still really hot at the same time. A strange
The
blend.
best kind of zombie.
Why not?
Best kind of alien zombie.
Yeah, so we had definitely a fine pedigree of actor going back for a very long time, and I was impressed with that. And I think, like you're saying before, that's what made this movie get made.
Yeah, she does like work really well. I think in gothic material, especially. It was a few years ago. There's a Gretel and Hansel movie. She played the witch in, but like with these different. It was kind of like that same sort of witch empowering. You don't know your own powers, so it was like almost a mixture of sinister her role, and then still kind of having that power and that control, but kind of like, let me show you another way, another path, sort of a thing. But yeah, she was definitely great. I think obviously I like this movie more than my counterparts here, but it's not for everyone. Overall, I guess the focus is, to me, it felt very compelling, very explorative, and a sort of a ethereal gothic tale just on tragedy and righteousness. Has some folk horror elements, part revenge story, but it seemed like the bigger part was this self-discovery and this sort of self-empowerment and kind of how it looked. For those who have been used or discarded, I think it was fairly women focused, so maybe this is just a film that only appeals to women. I don't know, or not. But it being the Women in Horror Month, might be one to check out, as it definitely has a very strong, fierce, feminine perspective, and some of it is not just about the power that it kind of demonstrates, from the witches to the living, I guess. But it also had a pretty strong, like, unlikely friendship sort of scenario, with the main character being this traumatized aging film star slowly finding herself, and this compassionate nurse who has her own baggage but is working to leave it in the past. It definitely felt refreshing and had a sort of subtle, powerful kindred spirit feel. What kind of like spoke to me most was like learning to fight for yourself, but also learning that there's worth in fighting for others.
Mm. Well said.
Mhm.
Well said. Any other thoughts about... Oh, that actually reminds me of, why the fuck is it called She Will? I was thinking, okay, the definition of will is key here. Does it mean she will like she's going to, or does it mean she will like her will, her resolve to
I
move
think
forward?
that's why it's called that.
You think so?
For both.
She will. I don't know.
Yeah, no, that works. And again, it's like kind of letting this other righteous power take over her, but also, try not to get too spoilery, but there is a certain element of, no matter how well-intentioned or kindred spirit, that you can't rely on any other power to kind of take over you completely, or you lose yourself in the process.
It kind of goes back to my wonderings of how they came up with like the seeds of the idea, or what motivated them to make this. And the title is just perfectly in line with like, why did you pick that? But it does make sense, but it's still a little bit too ambiguous to satisfy me. So I feel like it encapsulates that overall sense of me being kind of impressed with the artisticness of it, but also really frustrated and mildly annoyed with the execution.
When you asked like what motivated them and everything, I think you were right earlier when you said that it may have just been a writer trying to work through something. It may have just been that, or somebody was inspired by somebody else's trauma or something. Because, yeah, I don't. there didn't really feel like it didn't really feel like there was a climax that you move towards. It was sort of like a climax that just sort of happened. So it's sort to me, that, at least that's how it felt like to me. So it did feel a little bit ambiguous. Like overall, the whole thing sort of felt a little bit ambiguous to me, from the title to when you start watching the movie to everything else. But I wonder who greenlit it. You know what I mean? Like, how do you pitch it? Because it is one of those films. Like, if I was trying to pitch it, I was like, you've got to feel it. You've got to feel it, and then you'll know what I'm talking about. Can you feel the movie? But I thought it was an interesting film. I think it is the type of film that if you're into films like Hereditary, Midsummer, Suspiria, it's definitely that genre of horror. So if horror art house type films are what you're into, that's definitely it. Definitely doesn't follow your typical horror arcs, right? It doesn't really, the typical something happened, denial, then finding out something, what's the history behind it, and then triumph. It definitely doesn't follow that. But it's definitely, it was an interesting film. You mentioned that you had to watch it twice to get it. See, this is the thing about me and films. I believe that a film should be able to tell you its story in one go. You shouldn't have to watch it twice to be able to understand it. I think as a filmmaker, if you have to watch something that I've done, you have to watch it twice in order for you to understand what I'm trying to get to you, I failed. I haven't delivered the message. This is not the medium that I should have used, X, Y, and Z. So, in terms of that, that's not.
I mean, I do think it should hit. Like, it should hit or connect you. You should have an overall understanding of the story. There are a lot of films that then on a second viewing, you can take away those extra layers and subtle things.
Yeah.
I mostly just watched it again to have it fresh in my mind for this conversation. But even knowing everything that was coming, I know we've talked about that, it was a very feeling film. And there was, again, very passionate about horror. I have, immense belief in so much that it can invoke and explore. There was a period, I don't know, not that long ago, like I was really into French extremity, I still am, but the big period of time when those films were coming out was maybe 2007 to 2011-ish. And I remember there just being a lot of horror films around those times that feeling of something just like powering and like, I don't know, just feeling so much, and whether it be the dread or discomfort or just kind of the taking away so much of the survivor instinct, and just something that just fuels you and powers through you. And it was years before a film made me feel like that again. And I felt for sure an element of that here. I felt, I don't know, sort of definitely empathetic. I found it, a very wounded, beautiful, but honest sort of exploration. And then where it goes, it was just, I guess, excitement and empowerment just sort of filled me. So that's what it did for me. Might not do that for everyone, but.
Well, I think that even horror films, which on the surface seem like a negative experience because it's trying to scare you or make you feel threatened in some way, in a lot of ways, there's no reason why it can't be empowering or uplifting or triumphant in a lot of ways, or beautiful even. Yeah, I guess it goes through waves or cycles, and we're going through more of an art house sort of thing in these last few years, and definitely like exploring those aspects too. I like seeing things done less formulaically, and I don't know what the structure was of this film either. It didn't seem like it really had much. There was a catharsis at the end, but it wasn't necessarily structured in a way that I felt I could predict what was happening, and maybe that's a good thing. Yeah.
Otherwise, you know the whole story. What's the fun in that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think so. That's what I meant. Like, when I said that it's not, necessarily a good thing that your hand is taken and taken through the film. So you're good with that. The fact that you could sit and just be in the moment and watch the film for what it is. I think maybe perhaps if we were more like that, we maybe would have enjoyed it better the first time round. I think it's that. I think it's the whole unpredictability Because I felt that way about Hereditary. The first few minutes saying that, I remember sitting in the cinema and actually leaning forward, trying to like really concentrate, where is this film going? And then that one scene, and I think everybody knows that one scene.
Yeah.
When that happened, it was like, well, I don't know what's happening. Like, I'm just gonna sit back and just let things happen. And then it took you on a journey. So I think that this is that sort of film where you just gotta sit back and, you know what? Just let go and not try and figure it. Don't try and figure it out. Otherwise, you'll get frustrated, I think. Yeah.
I mean, I like eerie, sort of traditionally chilling, just exploring the scare. But I've just seen so many horror films now, and I think I have a certain high expectation maybe for horror. Like, I wanted to do and explore and say so much that I kind of look for different things now. So something that just has powerful emotion, sometimes that does a whole lot more for me than jump scares, or even a concept of like, oh yes, in reality that would be pretty scary. But just something, I don't know, there's something about that human emotion and trauma that's very relatable and powerful, and when you can kind of explore it in a genre that's as like intense and pushes things to sort of an extreme as horror does, but can say it in a poetic way. Sometimes that's stronger. But I know you said you have might be just different tastes in horror.
Yeah, I'm sort of so I read creepypastas for my YouTube channel. So the type of stories that I pick out, they have to have that. They don't have to, but they usually have a certain arc, right? And the arc. So it might just be that. It might just be I am so used to a certain type of horror, like the way a story develops, that I kind of. I expect it when I go and watch a movie. I expect it, and if I don't see it, I'm sort of like, well, what's going on now? I get frustrated in that sort of sense. But that might. I'm not saying that's a good thing. It's it might just be. I try to put out a certain amount of stories every week and stuff. So that sort of clouds my judgment almost, right? It makes me, when I look at a horror film or a horror story, there's certain things there's certain points I want it to hit. And if it doesn't have those, I'm like, well, next. It's just like, so that's how I sift through stories. So maybe that's what happens when I go into a movie. So not necessarily a good thing. I'm just saying.
If you'd like to join our Society of Grotesquerie and Loathing, please subscribe and give whatever form of like or approval the platform you are on provides.
Comment your wretched thoughts below, along with what you would like us to expose in future episodes.
Keep our podcast suffering on by finding it in your cold, black-withered hearts to support us on Patreon.
A link to our PayPal is also below for one-time donations of any amount.
It was nice knowing you. Fuck. Let's do that one more time.
Oh, we definitely were in sync.
Hello, God. It was nice knowing you.